Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kasper On BI. This will be the last one of the year, and it will be a solo one again. I had a few episodes planned. Unfortunately, I had to cancel them due to some personal reasons, but early January we'll pick it up again, and we'll start to get them going. What I wanted to do today is a tradition that we've been doing for a long time. At the end of the year, we'll do a quick review. What has happened this year in Power BI land? The first thing that I quickly want to talk about is what has been on everyone's mind, Corona. It was a really tough year, working from home, sitting at our desk. Obviously for me, there was not really a big change because I was already doing it, but no traveling, no visiting and seeing colleagues. I have some new colleagues on the team that I've never met in person, which is a bit of a challenge. And really, I really miss conferences. I was lucky enough to visit 2 this year. So that was great, actually being able to see some of our friends in person. I went to Belgium, I went to Copenhagen. That was great, but I haven't been to the office in Redmond for almost 2 years now. So I really miss that. And now with the new variant, things are a bit scary again. Luckily, we have Teams, and the online community like this keeps me going. And it also made me start doing this podcast and just starting to recording and talking about what I'm thinking and interviewing guests and learning from them. So I really enjoyed that last year, and I'm planning to keep on going with it. I made some small changes to the setup, and I hope to get a new camera soon too, which will make it even more easy to do the recordings and do the setup. The thing that I hated about the setup that I had before is I had to go set up things, I had to go set up the camera and all these things. Now it's pretty straightforward and quick. I just set it up, the setup is here, and I can start rolling. Of course, I need to think about the content, which is a bit of a challenge, obviously, but I think it will get better over time. Now, let's talk about Power BI. This was really the year when we saw, for those of you who've been following me along, I work in the Power BI CAD team. We work with some of the largest customers out there, like the really big customers. And this was really the year when we saw the difference between those customers already using Power BI for quite a long time, and the usage has been growing. But the last year is where we really see Power BI going from self-service to enterprise adoption at large scale. Again, Power BI was already used, but it was used as a departmental level, and it was used in larger organizations by just running Power BI, and IT was supportive. But this year, we've really seen it take off. Previous years, and again, I usually say this in my presentations when I talk, our team is the tip of the spear. So we see things earlier than most others because we work with those large customers who have their particular needs and so forth. So really more talk about standardization, and on it with massive companies. I will share 2 links of 2 customers that we've worked with that really highlight these stories. One is Nestle and the other one is Bayer, which are really big companies and have an interesting strategy. My team is also responsible for creating those customer stories. So whenever we have a customer successful with Power BI, we've created that relationship. We try to create a nice customer story out of it, because it's one thing to hear someone from Microsoft talk, but it's another thing when you actually see it in the words of someone who actually implemented Power BI and actually has to pay for it. And he says, I'm happy with it. This is where it's going. So those customer stories are amazing. Again, links in the bottom with 2 examples, but if you go in there, you can find many, many, many more. So again, really the big change here was from self-service to enterprise adoption. And a lot of organizations are struggling with doing that self-service to enterprise adoption, because it is not actually I should say not your father's, it's not my BI anymore, because when I started with BI industry, it was very much so that I was the BI developer sitting at my desk, building BI dashboards, building reports, and giving it to business users. Now, in this new world, IT although that's also still a part, right? The enterprise models, the big models that are broadcasted more broadly around the organization. But it's more around, okay, how do we get this enterprise BI and how do we get this self-service BI in a guided fashion? So that's where really the interesting things, and we've shipped some in my team. I'm pretty proud of. Matthew Roach has been pushing this together with Melissa Coates, a Power BI adoption roadmap. So how can you go from, okay, we have this self-service organization, the users are excited about Power BI, but they need help because they are not the people who are looking at Marco and Alberto's blog posts every week. They are people who are just doing their job. How can we help them? How can we guide them along? And as you know, if you're listening to the podcast more often, it's a topic I talk about a lot with a lot of my guests too. So yeah, the Power BI adoption roadmap that my colleague Matthew Roach and Melissa have pushed on is really helping customers along the way. And we've seen this for many customers. They've taken the journey from self-service, where people are alone, to building this center of excellence, where they're helping and guiding users along. So that's really, to me, one of the big things that has happened this year. And that is also possible by some of the features that I'm really excited about, some of the highlights that the Power BI team has shipped this year. So what are some of the most amazing things that has contributed to this? Well, first of all, for me, is a lot of the functionality around governance. So we have new APIs that can tell you what data has been shared with who. That is really significant and key because a lot of organizations were asking for this. MIP data labels, that has really taken a lift this year too, because now you can say, okay, in my organization, you need to use management information protection when you use Power BI. You have to set a label. So at that moment, you're actually thinking about how important is this information. And if you set it to it's very important, then automatically the system will take care of it cannot be shared. For example, if I now take that Power BI workbook and I email it to someone outside of my organization, he won't be able to open it. If you go open it in the Power BI service as a report, you download it into Excel, you won't be able to actually share it either because that MIP label transfers. So as soon as we start talking about those things, IT organizations are much more interested in making this the standard product. Because of course, business users are already convinced because the tools that they wanted to use are already there. They love it. They can do their things with it, but it's IT who needs to be convinced. And there are different things needed to be able to do so. MIP data labels, a Purview integration, obviously too. Purview is still brand new, but it is really interesting because you can get a full end-to-end lineage between your whole product, from your Power BI report to all the way to where the data was landing inside of Azure. So with Purview, you can tie it all together. And to be able to do this, we released new scanner APIs. And those scanner APIs can be used for many other purposes. It isn't necessarily just for Purview, but for a lot of other things too. So you can use that too. Another thing that I'm really excited about, obviously, and I already did a separate podcast about too, so I don't want to go over too much, but Gen 2. And Gen 2 has really changed the game for us, but also for customers. There's much less things that they have to worry about. So refreshes are going much better, because now in the past, the refreshes are trying to work together on the same machine as where you are running your queries. So you're running your queries and you're running refresh on the same machine, and they're fighting for resources. With Gen 2, refreshes are running on a different node. So they're not fighting for resources anymore. It's all virtual. So refreshes are running much more smoother, much higher success rate. And the same thing goes for being your own noisy neighbor. We don't have that problem either, because we are running the show for you in the background. And if you are using more resources than what you bought your capacity for, there's auto scale that can actually give you a little bit of a breathing room until you potentially need to either buy more capacity or kick some really noisy people off the capacity because they're doing some really crazy things. We've seen that too. So Gen 2 really changed the game. A lot of customers are very excited and happy about it. The new metrics app, it's coming. There are some problems with it, but even this week, a new version has shipped. So that will definitely help us on the path to making this more prominent. Now, the other feature that I'm super excited about, and we've been talking about for quite some time, is the composite models over analysis services. And again, this is where the IT team and self-service team world comes together, because those composite models over analysis service allow you to connect to a data set in Power BI that might have been built, or an Azure analysis services that has been built by your IT organization, but that IT organization in the past, when they had to make changes, you had to go to them and ask them, okay, you make changes and all of these things, and oh, I have this data source, can you add it? And they say no, because this reason, or it's going to be too expensive to do. With composite models, you can just go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to connect to that model. I can make changes to it locally. The main model will stay the same. I can make changes to it locally, and I can connect to it with my Excel spreadsheet. So I can have that enterprise governed model sitting right over there with the right dimensions and the right metrics and all these things. And I can combine it with my local data. That is very interesting. And we've been waiting for this for quite a long time. This year, it has been there. They're still working on it. It's still in preview. Hopefully, next year, we will be able to get a GA date of this too. Now, the other one that I'm very excited about is Power BI Goals. As soon as goals came out, even in our own team, we started to create goals. And what you can do with goals is, I mean, the name already gives it away. You can set a goal for yourself, but the goal can come from any data set. So you can create a single page where you track everything that you need to do, all your OKRs and metrics and KPIs, all the things that you have to go figure out. You can put on one page. They can come from any data set and around the whole tenant, as long as you have access to it, obviously. And you can comment it, you can share it with other people, you can create it for other people, and you can track their names against it too. You can see the history. Are you trending towards where you need to be or not? It's really, really, really cool. And yeah, I'm very excited about where this is going to take us even further. When we showed this to customers for the first time, they were very enthusiastic about it too, especially because you can also build it for other people. And that's really cool too. Now, finally, the last feature that I wanted to point out is the new formatting pane. Miguel on my team has worked on this. And what it really means is, okay, in the past, the format pane has been come alive over the years and become a little bit cluttered. The new format pane is much more friendly to use. It is much more intuitive to use. So if you just want to do things, you can do them really quickly. The UI makes sense. The entry points make sense. The things that belong together are together. So that I'm really excited about too. Again, it's in preview still. So next year we're expecting GA date. So a lot can change in the meantime. If you have feedback, if you have comments, send them to the team, go to the IDs forum, or reach out to us on Twitter and talk about these things. So the amazing features of this year: Gen 2, composite models over analysis services, MIP data labels, APIs, purview integration with Scanner, but also APIs that allow enterprises to see which report has been shared with who. The new format pane and Power BI goals. Those are the big items that we've shipped this year that I'm very excited about. Now, I want to quickly shift back to my team too, the Power BI CAD team. We did some amazing things too here. For example, we created a new training module, the learning path on how to create Power BI reports effectively. again, by two of my colleagues, they've created this course, and it allows you to give you a lot of hints and tips and tricks on how do you effectively create a Power BI report, and what are the pitfalls? How do you make sure that you don't use too many visuals? How do you convey the information in such a way that is being usable by your users? Power BI adoption roadmap, again, I talked about it many times before. All the links will be in the description, but the Power BI adoption roadmap is really golden. And I've heard from so many customers who've used it in their organization. They're really excited about it. And finally, the last thing that I wanted to mention is the best practice analyzer. The best practice analyzer allows you to run, and again, this is something that we do when we talk to all customers. When a customer comes to us and says, oh, okay, we have refresh problems, we have performance problems, what do? We tell them run the best practice analyzer. You open Tableau Editor, you connect to your Power BI data set, and you run the best practice analyzer. And this best practice analyzer has over 50 rules that share what is going on. Do you have the wrong keys? Do you use too many bidirectional relationships? Do you have DAX problems that we can find out? Maybe you have the wrong settings on your columns. It will look at the whole model and figure out, okay, here are some optimizations you can make. So I would definitely say you should run this. Now, finally, the last thing that I want to point out, and this is an area I'm not too familiar with, but on the Power BI embedded front, Ted on the Power BI CAD team has created this amazing, I would almost want to say a training course, but it's a very deep training course, and more of like a dev camp. If you want to learn more about Power BI embedding, follow this. And again, the links will be in the description. And again, I don't know too much about Power BI embedding. Actually, maybe we should do a podcast about Power BI embedding. That would be interesting. So we can all learn. Yeah, and that's it. That's in 10 minutes. I think actually we're over at 15 minutes. But that is 2021 in review. I'm really excited to see what is going to come next year. I wish you all an amazing end of the year, amazing holidays, and I'll see you next year. Thank you. Bye.